Hi everyone. Hi Tim.
Hi,
Hi Andrew.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Tim.
Okay. This is a today transformative talk for integrate business planning. This is EP number 5. That the last one we will wrap up what we talk about IBP. So I think it's everyone know from episode number 1 and to number 4, we know about each module of IBP already. So if we would like to start, imagine I am in a company. We would like to start for end-to-end process for IBP. What we should do today, I try to imagine for gap analysis that we should run and try to assessment. May is a team can share what we would like to do for first start to ensure we go on the right track and we have is a step by step right solution for IBP process in terms of supply chain assessment. Can you share with this team?
Yeah. Thank you, Siddharth. For us, it's such an important journey to go on that we need to make sure that the early steps that we take are seen across the whole business as being successful. And there will be many, anytime we make a change, there will be people that are very excited about it, and there will be people that are reluctant, and there will be people that are actually resisting change. So it's fundamental that a program as transformational, but also as big as end-to-end supply chain or integrated business planning, that we do not want to start poorly. If you start poorly, you may never not get another chance. So what we do, it's also incumbent upon us to make sure that we pick the right things. You imagine if you go to a doctor and you have lots of different symptoms, maybe the doctor can fix a broken arm or whatever, but if you have cancer, maybe that's perhaps a broken arm is a bad example, but you know, if you have warts and you have cancer, I want the cancer sorted out first, right? So it's really important that we diagnose, and once we diagnose, we say it's fundamental that we workshop with the business team to show them, here are all the areas that you can improve your business on. But it's not our business, it's your business. And then we start workshopping with them about how would you, which of these are most important to you. A good example, I'll show you a summary page in a second. There's lots and lots of detail behind it when we do an opportunity assessment, but it's important that the business knows their current situation. And you can imagine for many customers that we had before COVID, reducing inventory is a fantastic way of getting a lot of cash back into the business so it can fund other investments. But right now, where we are at COVID, supply is so important and so difficult to rely upon that inventory is not a bad thing for now. So depending on the situation, it's not always the same outcome. And I'll just share a view with a real case study that we did, a real opportunity assessment. I'm not going to share all the details with you because that would be inappropriate. But so for this client, we found that they had a $24 million opportunity that we could help them reduce their inventory by $24 million. We could help them reduce their aged stock by $550,000 a month. Every month they're reducing $500,000 of inventory that was going to be old. It would not sell in the next 12 months. So we could put in processes to fix. Their changeovers were costing $1.8 million per month, per annum. And overtime was costing $500,000 per annum. And we showed them in the first year, we could save you $5.5 million of inventory, or over $1 million of aged stock, and or about $450,000 of changeovers and $250,000 of overtime reduction. That's what we thought, but then we had to workshop with the customers to figure out what we could do. And all of that, where we agreed, once we worked through all of that and looked at what would have to change, what could stay the same, where we would need to improve the processes, then we were able to agree upon a plan to reduce to free up $7.5 million of working capital in the first year. That was a big enough prize to pay for the next several years of improvements. So
this is a big money. Tim.
Yeah, it is big money. But that was not an enormous business. That was maybe $100 million revenue. So big, but not huge. Yeah, you think about $7 million savings on $100 million of revenue. There's possibly double their profit margin for the year. Enormous impact. You do not have to be a $1 billion business to make big money, because there are big opportunities. But if you choose wrong, and if we just go for overtime reduction and we get $200,000, people don't really notice, may not notice across the business. So it's important that we pick the right goals. Once we know what we can pull, then we can focus on it. So important we don't try and do too much at once, and important that we pick ones that we can get quick wins, so that we get more encouragement and people want to get on board. They want to be part of the change.
Right. When we do supply chain assessment, who should attend for assessment, and how long period of time to ensure they looking all function, sales, marketing, supply chain, planning or operation. Andrew, can you suggest they should do only supply chain or only sale, or they should do at all?
So that's again, it's one of those things that people really need to think through. And Tim sort of alluded to this earlier, is how you what benefits you're getting can't be robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I know that's a bit of a very Western phrase, but what you can't do is make one part of the business better at the expense of the other part of the business. And I think Tim said this earlier, which was, that's where you really do need that cooperation early. So all of those areas that you mentioned, Kunsitaporn, they don't necessarily have to be involved in that early part of viewing what they're trying to do, but it has to be reviewed with all parts of the business. And that, and one really special piece that people very much forget about, and it can be very hit and miss in different organizations, but your human capital department is quite important in a lot of this as well. Not quite so much in certain countries, but if you're operating in Australia, or where you've got unions that still operate, or you've got very strong shop floor, Tim sort of mentioned one thing there of, headcount reduction. This is an area where you have to get your human capital people involved, right? These are, there's some serious issues to be thought through before you start doing any of these things. And again, it's looking at it and saying, at what expense are we going to do this? So I think it still needs, it doesn't necessarily need everyone in on it from the beginning, but the plan has to be socialized across the business to ensure that it's not impacting other parts of the business negatively, because, planning in blessed isolation is never a good thing. Someone's always going to potentially lose in some of these things if they're not consulted in the first place. So, I would say again, it can be done within a team, and it probably starts within the supply chain team, but it really does need to be envisaged and worked through with the rest of the business before it gets put into plan.
I would further that any change that touches parts of the organization will cause fear, and the best way to elevate that, I have seen and have been included in, to avoid or minimize the fear and get people excited is have the big list of all the areas we'd like to work on, and communicate collectively why we're going for this project first and where the other pieces fit in, but start sharing the vision of how it all comes together, and have people elevate or communicate their fears early, and and address them, and don't hide from them. If you do that and you continue to communicate about, here's the piece we're working on, and we've agreed why we're working on that first, and your areas of improvement or change are coming, and you know when, but we're not hiding it. It's not broad-sided, and it's not in isolation. Then fear has nowhere to go. It evaporates. You know, there's that wonderful thing when you express a fear, it tends to evaporate, and it's really important in organisations too. So that communication piece and working with inside the business to get the agreement on what to start first, because there's opportunities everywhere. But like Andrew said, there may be problems, and people will definitely be scared if they're not consulted, and if they don't have a clear line of sight of where they're heading. So.
Okay, right. When you get the supply chain assessment report, then you present to management. What is they should is consider and trust in terms of opportunity and return of investment. Can you share that process to ensure customer they get buy-in and they plan to implement in their organization?
Yeah, quite often we'll do a multi-level approach. So first, we for the owners of the data that we're working through, let's say we're working through forecast accuracy as an area of opportunity that we were looking at. We would check with the people who are doing the forecasts, check that they agree that their numbers are what we're measuring against, and it's not somebody else's forecast, or the numbers aren't misreported. And so we're checking as we're putting it together, and we're always very candid and open about what we're seeing. And we check that during the process, and then we work with the management team and the people that we've been working with to make sure that we're expressing the data and the observations and positioning it like this is an opportunity. If we had better systems, if we had better business processes, then this is how it could look. And it's really important. It's very, very incumbent upon my staff and myself when we're working with businesses that we do this with humility and awareness, because it's everybody. I don't care how good you are and how smart you are. If you don't have the right tools and you're busy, you can't get across everything. So you can't fix everything, and a proud person will take it very personally. But we need to show where there are real problems to be able to solve problems. And so it's quite I have had, where we've had interesting or challenging management teams, we have done closed door presentations first, but we always make sure that there's an open door presentation afterwards quickly, so that any concerns can be mitigated, because the management team knows some of the cultures better than we do. And so sometimes we get requested to do that first. So, but it's important that it doesn't remain closed door. So it's okay to talk to the managing director and the CFO to make sure the numbers that they're happy with, and that there's not something confidential that we're talking to or so on. But it has to become shared so that the goal can be shared. And that's something that different cultures don't handle this the same way. But the results, I've never seen people not. I believe that all people across all cultures can get excited by the opportunity of working well. But we have to be very sensitive about, because we can talk about big numbers. If you to the point, if that $7.5 million was in your business, you're a very, very capable manager. But it's easy, and I know for me, I would feel embarrassed if that was found in my business. It's very easy to take it personally. So we have to manage that through, make sure that everyone is understood that this is what could happen with the right tools. But if you're driving an old tractor in a Formula One race, you can't win. You must.
Right.
Yeah. So we're just saying what would happen if you had a Formula One.
Okay. I think that is a good idea. My experience, I think, is every company they have is a good plan, but not sure about good execution. Andrew, can you suggest, because normally is most of company they look at the financial, it's ROI really good, but when they do execution, it's fail. So could you please suggest how we can help customer to have good plan and good execution in terms of when they implement the project?
Yeah, it's a very common thing, right? We start out with very good intentions. Someone like Tim comes along and other consultants or whatever beforehand, and do a great job of showing you what the opportunity is, but do we ever get there? And I think and this kind of leads to something that I learned many years ago. As a great phrase we used when I was at PwC, and it was called making change stick. And that really begins with, we can build the thought process, we can build what we want to do, and we can start to implement it, but it's really making that change stick and making sure that we're held accountable. And I think what happens is, all too often the ROI plan just gets left behind because everyone starts concentrating on the technology. And I think that's that's an easy place to get lost. It's got to be, yes, it's very important to get that right, but it's also important to start measuring as you begin. So you can't compare what you haven't had data on before, and you can't compare unless you've got that before and after, and you continue to measure. And people get a little bit scared of this. It's very much, well, what happens if it doesn't match up to expectation? And I think that's a very common fear to have, because you don't want to say, we're going to get $1 million in savings, and you get to 500,000. In my mind, that's okay. What that means is, did we get the initial numbers wrong? Maybe. Did we have bad data? Maybe. But look at our data now. Look at how we can compare things now. Look at how we do it. So, you don't always have to go above and beyond. I mean, always, if you say you're going to save $1 million and you save 2 million, awesome. But I think, you shouldn't be scared to measure. You shouldn't be scared to do it. And a lot of people do. They tend to hide that away somewhere and just go, okay, we've gone live. Let's just get on with our lives. That's not the end of it. You want incremental savings year on year. You don't want this to be a one-off. And again, don't be scared to keep pulling back out the plan and tweaking it. Nothing says it has to be set in stone. And it takes a bit of bravery. It really does, because people don't, and Tim sort of said this before, it's showing someone that you can help their business can be embarrassing for some people. It can be embarrassing for the project team if they're not hitting targets, but that's okay. It's refine and keep driving on. So, that's where I think most opportunities fail, because we fail to go back to what the original numbers were and the original intent. But again, they don't have to be set in stone. We can revise them as we go along, because we might find out things that we never knew before.
I love some of the points you made there, Andrew. I think, for me, one of our mantras at Profit is that we want to help customers expect more from their software programs. Because if you just, I don't know if you recall, but we had a 3S model where we talked about system, structure, and skills. And too often people start and they justify what can be done. Let's say it's inventory reduction by improved forecast accuracy. So we're going to put in a forecasting system and it will pay for itself by reduced inventory or improved customer retention or whatever. And that'll go into CapEx. And then when they start implementing, they just put in software. And if you just put in software, it's a very shallow. And in fact, if your only goal is to put in the software, you'll end up replicating what people are currently doing in Excel or on whiteboards. And you won't make a business impact if you're not helping people make different decisions and faster decisions, more informed decisions. They're going to make the same decisions, and the software does not help change the business program. So we have to change the business processes and the decisions that people are making if we want to have a business impact. And that's lost when people decide that this is an IT project and we should just put in some software. And for me, one of the things that we really work hard at in Profit, I'm just going to share another slide if I can, that we really want to work hard on making, on elevating the awareness of that everyone should expect. It's easy to look at software. So, oh yeah, that's got the features that we want, or that's that's IBM, so that's got to be good. But it's really much better to be thinking about, well, how is this going to improve my business processes? And I argue, and we believe that the deepest value you'll get from a program that may include software to chop the wheels or to hold the change in place is to help you make improved decision making. There should be demonstrable ROI. There should be improved decision making. Most people think, most businesses, when they buy software, they end up getting stuck here. They may have put in the CapEx, these better processes and ROIs, but they implement just to get the features in, and it's an absolute mistake. You will not get the ROI unless, as Andrew says, unless you continually come back to, you measure what you are planning to achieve and you make sure the processes are in place. Of course, the features need to work, but it's not enough. We need people to be working differently and making different decisions, better decisions.
Right,
so,
right.
I'm passionate about this, but for me, that's an enormous difference between most businesses fail on IBP processes if they just look at software as being, once we've got the software, we can do it. No, once you've got the software, you can use that software to support better processes, but you must chop the processes in place so the change sticks.
Mm-hmm. Tim, when we start the project, how they can look at the financial planning? Because most activity start from demand side, sales side, the end for financial. So what the right process to do in terms of financial planning? When they make decision, they will start on the financial revenue first, or what the right track to do?
The outcome for me, that's part of when we do the opportunity assessment. We need to decide what is going to have the ROI that we need to justify the project. And in case you're wondering, I will always, I will be very nervous if we were asked to do a project that didn't have a 1-year payback. We always want the system to have a 1-year payback or better. Again, because we want everybody to know that once the process is in place, it's paid for itself. There is no longer a question about it. And part of doing that is forecasting is a good example. If we decided to work on forecasting, improve forecast accuracy, the task of improving forecast accuracy may be that we're going to take them after we've done the metrics. We may find we're going to improve your forecast accuracy from 25% to 55% at the end of this year, and then we'll get to 75% in the next 4 years. But that's quite slow payback. But there are some immediate things you can do even before you improve forecast accuracy that dramatically improve your ability to control your supply chain and the cost in your supply chain. So if you take your forecast accuracy, you know which products are easy to predict and which ones aren't just by looking at history. And we tag those, we call them A-class items or Y-class items or whatever, those items that are very predictable, and we share that through the supply chain, and we make sure we only order enough to cover what we know we need or what we're forecasting, and we know that they're reliable. We can immediately reduce a lot of the pantry filling and buffering just in case stock. So even though we haven't yet improved the forecast accuracy, just by doing forecast analytics, we can immediately change our buying behaviors on, let's say, half of our product range may be very stable. And then we can put in programs to improve the forecast accuracy. So if I was measuring that and I wanted a quick return because I need something that's going to pay for itself in the next year, I'd be looking for those opportunities that the end game may be forecast accuracy, but are there inventory programs that can come just by doing the analytics while we're implementing that immediately will show value? And then I'd put metrics around those and put the targets around those. And if they were more than a 1 year, better than a 1 year payback, they'd be what I'd be leading with. We'd still be measuring forecast accuracy, but we'd know, look, 55% is where we'd like to be at the end of this year. That might be worth $5 million of inventory for us, but we know and doing analytics and segmenting our product range and changing the way we treat those reliable parts of supply chain from the more volatile parts may lead us to $3, $4, $5 million that will easily pay for anything that we're doing. So I always look for what can we get quick wins, what can we get reliable metrics on, and if possible, lead indicators, so that we know before we've got there that we're on the right track. If they're not lead indicators and they're lag indicators, we want quick indicators. We don't want to wait till the end of the financial year to find that we missed our targets. We must be able to, test and measure quickly so that we can refine the process.
Okay, right. I try to thinking when we do about sale and operation meeting process. When we have is a profit solution that how can help because we try to do product review, demand review, supply chain review. Then we try to do for reconcile for inventory and manufacturing production.
Yep.
So we will know the financial maybe it's 1 month or 2 months later. How is can agile or make it faster for better decision making in terms of is weekend is financial planning more and more better. Andrew, you can have experience like this. Can you share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. So for me, if you're looking at, I was just thinking of the kind of the other end of the spectrum from where sort of Tim's going as well with that finance, with the financials on these things and thinking about the supply as well. Supply planning and all those sorts of things. So when you start talking about all of those areas within the value chain, you are trying to pick an area where you can have that initial impact and that very the immediate impact. So Tim's talking about a 1 year ROI. If you look at even across in supply, you can find ROI in weeks. And it sort of comes back to one of the other things that sort of I probably should have mentioned a little bit earlier, but those financial impacts also mean what you've got to be doing is not just having those internal conversations as well. You've actually got to be talking to your suppliers. You've got to be talking to people outside of your, you can treat this like a very in a bubble within a bubble, right? You can have very segmented pieces of the business thinking about it, then the bigger business, but then, you're not in blessed isolation. You're part of an ecosystem or you're part of a value chain. And I think this is the other piece of the ROI that people don't really think about is working with suppliers, working with further down or in another section of that value chain. Because again, we talked about someone wins and someone loses potentially, but that's never going to be sustainable. What you have to be able to do is get that financial viability for everyone, because you can continue to screw your suppliers into the dirt, but that's just not good for them. And that means you potentially are starting to face supply problems because they'll start to treat you in the same way. So when you're doing these things, looking back down and looking external factors that you need to work with as well, and I'm just using suppliers as an example, you really need to be having that conversation further back down. But they can also help you with that ROI. So don't forget, this is what we talk about when Tim talks about a SCOA and things like that. That can be shared with third parties as well, because they can help you do this, and they should be helping you do this. Because if it's not a collaborative piece of work, again, someone is going to lose, and you don't. That is not a way to do good business. So from that point of view, I think thinking up and down that value chain outside of your own business will also help you achieve a lot of the financial results that you're looking for as well.
Right. Because it's in terms of management, I would like to know within 3 or 6 months, it should have some financial impact to ensure we go the right track.
Correct, and that's where you're looking for the a lot of the time you're looking for the fastest possible return, right? And I think that this is where you can get very involved in trying to be big and clever on these things. Sometimes, I always use the analogy of you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. And, so what you need to look at is where is this? You can do many things in parallel. They don't have to be sequential. But what you're trying to do is digest the pieces that are going to give you the best sustenance for your business. And I think people should stop and think about that as they go through this process, rather than just let's dive in and do everything.
Right. Tim, what you can share about financial benefit to ensure this is a good result for customer?
Yeah, if you and just adding on to that last bit and segueing into your question, it's we've seen plenty of times. You turn on the system, or you provide extra visibility to improve the decision making, and we see purchases on day one that they can see. When I'm going to place this order and I've already got 45 days cover, and this will take me up to 110 days cover, and they're ordering this on a 15-day cycle. Like, you don't need to order. If all you see from your MRP output or from your business system is saying, I need to order 10,000 of these units, you don't have informed decision making. But the minute we start telling you things like, right, that is actually, you're going to go from 45 days cover to 120 days cover, it forces you to say, why would I order that? I can wait. If that's quick to arrive, let's say that arrives in the next 3 or 4 days, I can wait another 40 days. I can check that 4 times if I check it each week, before I need to order. And just that cancelling of orders, or, if I had a big order there and I said it's more than I need, reducing it. Just the minute you start providing the right information at the right time, people can make better decisions. And this is what I mean about, you don't need to wait till your forecast accuracy is improved. So many people try and think, oh, we've got to do forecasting first because it's the first piece. And yes, it is the first piece. But, and they forget about that. The rest of the business is waiting desperately for that information. And they can make better decisions today, even if you give them a forecast and let them know how volatile it is. Where most people look at this and say, oh, we've got to get the forecast right. And they think that having a better forecast is the answer to the business process. There's other ways around this. So it's really important that we think about the whole supply chain and who needs what information, and what information can we get them today, as well as where are we heading in the future. And that's the first key to actually finding these financial opportunities. Is what can we do? Of course, we need a roadmap to say, here's where we're heading. We want to have an integrated system that when the forecast improves or when a forecast hits, it's immediately visible to my purchasers. I can do that today without needing to have 99% forecast accuracy. And this is where people kind of think, oh yeah, we're getting a forecast, we'll worry about what we do a bit later. The forecast on its own doesn't help marshal and energize my business unless it's visible. So it's at getting the right information at the right time. And that to me is the key of how we get the rapid results and how we make sure we've got those financial trackings in place. In terms of your major question about, how do you get those finances in place? It starts from the workshop where we're agreeing where we're tracking, and then it's about putting those measures in place. What can we do today that's not going to break the bank or clog up our ERP system? Or what can we do today to track to make sure that we're getting, firstly, the behaviours and the outcomes that we want, and secondly, letting people make smarter and more informed decisions. It's often that everyone in your supply chain is likely to try and do the best job that they can with the information that they've got. Not everyone is very good at knowing what other information they could have. And that's where we, as system providers, we can really help. Particularly once the business said, yes, what we want to do is get our forecast accuracy up to this, and we want to get our stock turns down to this, and we want to have this amount of changeovers and so on. Then that starts helping us all in understanding what are the priorities that we can go to, and where should we be looking, firstly, to track the progress that we make, and secondly, to help people make faster and more informed decisions.
Right. So when they do a supply chain audit, they know the return of investment already. They know the process. They get the roadmap when you have plan for them. So how we can ensure that plan for customer that is have good journey in terms of 6 months, 1 year, 2nd year, 3rd year, something, because it's when implement, for example, as Andrew suggested, maybe we can start from internal for supply chain side. That is maybe initial impact first, but we need to do for demand review with customer also. So how we can get good plan for them in supply chain journey?
Sorry, was that for Andrew?
I'll take it.
Right.
So I think again, what it comes back to is looking and again, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I think it's all down to that initial plan. You've
Right.
really got to that journey, and again, it's mapping it through and thinking about where the quickest wins are potential. And again, it doesn't have to be the quickest wins. You might want to go for the biggest wins. You've just got to understand what it is that you're sacrificing in order to do what you're doing. So if you're going for little incremental wins, then that's fine. But stick to the plan. Don't expect things to change and be the big bang overnight. What you have to do is be able to digest it. You have to be able to execute it. This is where a lot of people sort of fail, right? Is they don't understand what it's going to take to execute and be successful, and they expect to keep moving on. I think there's also there's a change fatigue that companies go through as well. Too many things too often to too many same parts of the business. So you tend to want to look for that change to be not necessarily always in one area. We talk about supply chain in a very amorphous mass, but there are discrete segments of the supply chain that you should be looking at, and whether that's from procurement all the way through to logistics, post-production logistics. There's always something that you should be looking at that is that improvement. And look, there's a million different methodologies out there on how you get continuous improvement. But I think the biggest one is literally to have that mapped to a degree where you understand what's next and maybe what the next two things are, without having it planned down to the 900 line Gantt chart to try and figure out that project next year. Because I just about guarantee it, as you get to the end of this project, there will be things you will need to change in the next one, because something will have changed, whether it's COVID, whether it's whether it's weather problems, whether it's shipping issues, it could be anything. What you need to be able to do is say, okay, and not be wedded to it, because I think a lot of people feel way too invested in what they've put on paper originally. It's okay to go back and revisit, because things change. And 6 months, as we've just found out in the last 18 months, is a long time. We all felt very secure about how our supply chains were. We all felt very secure about travel, all of these things, right? I work with customers today where it's just looking at it and saying, scenario planning tells us that you can only scenario plan for so many things. So let's be humble, let's revisit, and let's not be too rigid about what it is we're trying to achieve until we have achieved this point, and then let's revisit that plan. And it might only be a 5-degree tweak. It doesn't have to be a 180-degree turn on your plan. It's just a little bit, and that'll make it more efficient.
Yeah. For me too, on top of what Andrew's saying, that the reason why I both am always very keen to make sure there's a high value, low hanging fruit target that's easy to get at. If the first mini project, and I like to think of big projects as mini projects, if the first mini project is a success and we get a chance to celebrate the wins and everyone knows, well, that 3-month project and we saved $1 million, for example. It doesn't have to be $1 million, but it's got to be something significant enough to say, wow, what happens is that people on that project become kind of like mini heroes. And if some of those go on to the next project, there's a bit of celebrity status it gets, and people start wanting to get on these projects. If they're small, agile, Scrum style projects, you can move them rapidly along. People can still do their business as usual while contributing to the teams. And it becomes an exciting piece to be involved in. And that firstly, that during the change process, that's what you want. That avoids that fatigue, the change fatigue that Andrew was talking about, is having projects, not projects that last for a year and a half and under a grind and no one remembers why they were doing it, but short, sharp projects that you know what you're aiming for, and we have to measure the outcomes as we go to make sure we get there. And if we don't, then we recut and go again. But these short and sharp projects are the way to go. Not everything fits that bill, but if you get a couple of those underway, and then you start getting this notion of this is successful, this is different, it's making changes, you'll find you've bought the right to have a couple of, it's okay to drop the ball once or twice. You can't afford to on your first projects, but once the business has seen that this works, they'll forgive you if some of the harder projects take a few goes at. And that's why I'm always looking for a high value, fast result. It's not that it's necessarily the most sensible thing to do in terms of all of the lever points in the business, but there's a human change aspect that's so important to these, that if we blow it on the first job, if we just go for the money shot and we try and get all of the value up front and we don't get there, and it was a big drawn out project and everyone feels like it was a failure, the management team may lose confidence and may stop the IBP program altogether. So for me, you get these little highly fertile projects where you prove yourself, you learn the team, you understand the nuances, and then you use these little teams to spread a fire of excitement through the business. And the final part is that afterwards, after the transformation program, it's unbelievable when you get involved in that, and the excitement that it can radiate through a business is palpable. But eventually that too will change, and you'll move from a change in a business to a business as usual. And the only way that I know of making sure you chalk in place or continue to improve is firstly have the metrics, and secondly we have a review process where we periodically, and it's typically going to be 12 months after the project is completed, or 9 months after the end of the project, and then 12 months after that, we do subsequent reviews to check that things haven't slipped, that key people haven't moved away or something fundamental has changed. And that's just whether we do it or whether the internal business does it, you need to have the metrics in place to chalk the improvements. A proper IBP will self-improve. You shouldn't be satisfied with we just held that the improvements. It should always be improving. Sorry.
Right. Tim, I think it's in terms of management review and bird eye view. Can you suggest about supply chain control tower to looking at all? How can help, or how can we start with this?
Yeah, control towers are fantastic, and it requires a bit of energy up front. I found it's hard when I've been working inside businesses, not as a consultant, but in your day-to-day. It's hard to get the bandwidth to put your own control tower together. It's a little bit easier for us because we come in, we've seen 10 other companies this month that have similar issues. Once you've got a control tower in place, and many businesses are starting to get quite good at this anyway, in having key metrics that show them what's going on and they know how to read it. The key to a control tower is you don't want to spend time when you're looking at numbers on a control tower. Let's say you use just a traffic light system around your inventory levels or your days cover or your service levels or health and safety, whatever it is. It should be obvious to everybody who's looking at that what to do. There's nothing worse than control tower. It's got all these colors on it, and I can see it's green, so it's good. But if it's red or it's amber, if I don't know what to do, well, how's that helping? So the control tower has to be a management by exception. And for control towers to work technology-wise, they're easy to do. We have a profit control tower. Many businesses have their own business warehouse that they'll have tools sitting off it to achieve the same effect. And for me, the first thing is if you develop the metrics, even if you know where you're heading, you have to develop the metrics for the managers so that they own it and understand how it helps them do their job. And really, it should be telling you if you've got a problem, and you should intuitively be able to drill down from there. And the other piece that I've always found that, and the reason why we re-implemented our control tower, because a lot of businesses were only using historic data. And you've seen my graphic before of where I show the ERP systems look in the rear vision mirror. It's no good to show that you've just run over somebody. It's too late. I don't want to look in the rear vision mirror and see a carcass of the person I hit. I need to look ahead so I can avoid the problems. And many dashboards and many control towers avoid the lead indicators because they're not native to the ERP system. But that's why we have planning systems. That's why we have an IBP. That's why we get a forecast and why we project our inventory, why we project what we're going to make next, so we can start building a forward plan. So whether clients are using our tools or their own tools, I don't care. I'm just like, you want to take all the planning data that we have and put that forward so you can see the problem before you run into it. The best use of a control tower is to avoid the issues, not to tell you that you've got a problem, but to tell you that you will have a problem if you don't react. The next best is like how, you know, I know you've done lots and lots of work on shop floor improvement programs and shop floor data recording. Of course, I prefer to have a red light on top of my machine flashing if the machine is stopped for a breakdown and not have it. But better again is if it's going amber when there's vibration analysis or other indicators telling me we're going to have a problem. So to me, of course, we want to have indicators saying that there is a problem now, we're going to stop the bleeding, but better if we can avoid.
Right. Because most of organization, they need some right decision from top management. So when top management have is a dashboard like that, they can have is a right decision making. That is reduce some impact in their organization. So that is, I think, is a good idea to do. Anyway, when we start implement, we should start step by step. I think it's most of organization that I observe, they would like to start from internal. That means they can start from internal process like planning and scheduling module with MPS module. So some organization, they said no, they don't like to do that, because if they do that, they do only internal in their organization. They need to have impact with the customer also. So they would like to do like demand planning, like forecast manager something. What you should suggest, they can start first step, then second step, or they can just start parallel. What the right solution for them? Can you share some experience with as many customers?
Yeah, in my opinion, you want to practice and get a mechanism that works for you before you go and talk to your customers and perhaps drag them through a process that's not value added. So I don't care if you and your customers are ready to have metrics that you're going to share in dashboards or control towers, go for it. That's absolutely fine. But until, as a manager, until you've had a chance to use your metrics, refine them until they're usable, then that leaves you in a position to start working with other departments and then outside. In my opinion and my experience, the biggest opportunities in any business is in your blind spots, which is normally between the silos in your business or between the decision points, or where your metrics are not good enough. And that's where we find there's real value to be had. Because of that belief and experience, I'm also of the view that dashboards tend to be set up and seen as very static, and there's a whole lot of institutional wisdom in there. And you know, if you find yourself in a new position, just here's your dashboard, that's what you've got. In my opinion, that's not how these should be very elastic and should evolve as your needs evolve and change. And you don't want 1,000 metrics. You should be limited to the number of metrics and the amount of density of data in your dashboards. They should be able to, you know, hide some and evolve them so that as areas of opportunity present themselves, or if you're in improvement paradigm or project improvement, then you should be able to get extra visibility into those areas by having your dashboards up. And many businesses, unfortunately, they've got IT people that are very good and very aware of metrics, and they start putting them together for the business, but they're owned by IT, not the business. And that, to me, is a tail wagging the dog. So whether you do, I don't mind if you do your customer, but I caution you, unless you already have mature metrics, you may come off not having the experience you want. But if you getting insight into the customer is fantastic and applaudable. But in any of these cases, anywhere in your supply chain, to me, it should be an area that the business owns and the business knows that it's up to them to keep them current or morph them as is required. So they're not just a static piece. They're should be a very agile part of your business management.
And just jumping in there quickly as well. I mean, two major things for me when we do these. One is, have we got the right metric that we're taking to management as well? You know, giving them shop floor metrics quite often just, you know, it's too granular. It's not what they want to see. So have we got the right metrics? The second one is to go back to the granularity of it. Can we drill into it? Because, you know, there's no point in having a number or a color on a page unless you can click on it and drill down and understand. So even if it's green, you know, you still want to be able to do that. And then the other one is use them. I've seen so many of these dashboards, so many of these things that people have pulled together, yet they still come to leadership meetings or management meetings with their own spreadsheets. So, you know, you have to live and die by what you pull together. And I completely agree with Tim. You know, IT have a massive piece to play in this, but it is the tail wagging the dog. You know, if the guys can't get you the data you need, then you're not measuring the data that you need. So therefore, let's go find out how we get that data. And I think I've seen too many of these things die a death where you get into a leadership meeting and people say, but the numbers are wrong. Yeah. And therefore they turn up with another set of spreadsheets, or they turn up with some more data, or everyone starts to question it. Let's not talk about, you know, we shouldn't be talking about whether the data's, I mean, it needs to be questioned, but then it's how do we fix it so that we continue to use the same control tower visibility, or, you know, how we use them, not how we kill them off so that we go back to using our own silos of data. Yeah,
the true, you're absolutely right, Andrew. The true value is when a business no longer needs to worry about how to format the data or what it means. They're immediately looking at indicators and thinking about what the corrective actions are. That's when you've nailed it. And anything else where we're questioning the quality of the data, as Andrew said, that you've probably got the wrong metrics, you've definitely got the wrong data capture, or you've got, you know, people haven't been involved enough in understanding and configuring the data that they're looking at. Because that's the power. When you get it right, particularly if you've got multi-sites, different regions, to have everyone looking at the same data and using it is awesome. We've all seen benchmarking studies that people buy and pay lots of money for, so you can figure out, is my cost to serve the same as someone in Israel? And you get the data and it looks, oh, wow, I'm $1.23 a kilometre and they're $1.12 a kilometre. But what does that actually mean? Can I compare the data? Who knows? You know, if you're looking at data that can't be compared or you don't understand it, it's next to useless. It's worse than useless. It's actually distracting.
Right. Your comment and suggest, I think, is a very good interest, Tim and Andrew, because it's if they implement solution, they will get many of data, huge of data, like big data. So what they would like to do, they should have smart data, how they can turn from data to information. And they should have common KPI in common goal of the company, because not is a demand side for sale KPI or supply chain KPI. What should look like to implement for data-driven organization with common goal in terms of financial perspective?
Look, I'll give you, I'll just two minutes of my thoughts on that, and then I'll hand over to Tim. What does that look like? That looks like, to me, whenever you start having a discussion around those financial metrics, they firstly have to make sense to everybody. As you said, that it's not necessarily even just the common KPI. It's got to be a common definition. I've been in a lot of businesses where people will use the same words, but they mean different things to them. So you need a dictionary. It sounds silly, but you need a common dictionary to make sure that you're talking about the same thing. What is that financial goal? And I guess the next thing really is that we've talked about all of these things, and presuming that you do them all well and you do them all right, is who's going to be the person that keeps everybody accountable. And I think at the end of it, we can talk about all of the good financial things, but again, they don't always go the way we want them to. So who's going to keep people accountable and make sure that we're doing all the things that we do? So to me, it's kind of not necessarily numbers on a page. It's agreeing that we've got a common definition of what that is, and then who's going to keep people accountable. Sorry, Tim?
Not at all. For me, one of the things that's really important to avoid that kind of that gridlock of quality of data, and it wasn't me, it was him, and all that kind of noise that we've all seen and can serve to derail what could otherwise be fruitful conversations and manage and prevent managerial action. For me, one of the things that we do in our software, and I advocate strongly, is not everything easily lends itself to getting a financial cost on it. But to be able to normalize the decision making and to be able to prioritize, it is really useful to, for example, if something like inventory has a value now. Now you can argue whether it's the sales value of the inventory or whether it's the price you paid. And I'm not going to get into that conversation because it depends on the context. But in the case of, say, opportunities on the shop floor, if I'm looking at downtime or slow running or causes of waste, it can be very distracting to be able to look at, this cause of waste is costing me 3 centimeters of film on the edge trim waste, and how do I compare that to a stoppage that caused me to flush a whole lot of chemicals and I lost a lot of time, et cetera, et cetera. And what we strongly advocate is that you firstly use marginal costing concepts. So what is the total impact, not how the accountants will forensically value this, but what is the impact of if this problem didn't happen or this waste didn't occur? What is that? And then annualize it. And I don't need it to be accurate. It's indicatively annualize it. So by that, I mean, if I want to look at knowing that my changeovers average 3.6 hours per changeover is good, that's useful. If I know that it's 23,000 hours a year that we do spend in changeovers, that's certainly useful and staggering. If I know that that's $1.83 million of production time, that's actually, wow, okay. And how does that compare to overtime, which is, $500,000, and site transfer is $20 million. It allows me to compare disproportionate, otherwise uncomparable elements and opportunities. That's really, really useful. What isn't useful is arguing whether it should have been $19.20 an hour for the machine or $19.50. That's just missing the point, because all we're using here is an indicative annualized cost. And then it has a fantastic opportunity of galvanizing the business around, let's fix this problem. And it's more important than that problem because it's just a bigger slice of pie. It's a bigger slice of pie, but the effort is 5 times more. So it's not worth, double a return, but 5 times the effort doesn't weigh up. We'll go for the easier. It allows you to make some sensible kind of sensible navigation. That to me is one of the most important things that we can do, where you need to be able to compare unsimilar opportunities. Just use that annualized approximation, and the word approximation is really important, that we don't let the accountants get too hung up on how we're going to cost it. It's good enough, yeah. Plus or minus 20% is good enough for us to be able to weigh whether this needs our attention now, whether something else needs our attention. And that to me is one of the things that a lot of businesses really miss that, and unfortunately the ability to financially to put a financial approximation onto different areas of opportunity or activities in the business doesn't allow us to span easily across it. So for me, it's a really important thing to do. and that can be a fantastic value. But yeah, because of that arm wrestle that you get with people and their costing methodologies and so on, I always call it an annualized approximate cost, and that just lets you free. And I find that an incredibly useful thing in your dashboards, and we use it in planning. So while you're planning, you can see that looks like that changeover is going to cost $5,300, or that intersite transfer is going to cost you $7,000 in freight, but it's going to save you $5,000 in overtime locally, and you didn't have capacity anyway. So, you can start weighing up these decisions. And I don't care if it's $5,100 or $5,500. So I get enough information. If it's close enough and good enough to make an approximate, it helps me weigh my decisions. So for me, that's really important. As long as we understand what we're doing with it, then we can choose to be mature about and not get too hung up on those details. So.
Okay. Then before we finish this episode, can you share and suggest, because you have experience more than 20 years, what we should look like you can help customer in terms of consulting, assessment, or solution implementation for supply chain journey? Can you suggest on this? Then maybe Andrew the same question to suggest with the customer to ensure they can maximize benefit in terms of supply chain journey.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you. The supply chain opportunity assessment, we've been doing this, as you said, for 20 years, and it's profound. Even then, most businesses have a pretty good sense of where they have problems, but even businesses that already knew which areas that they had problems, they find it staggering when we put dollars to them, because again, it's not a common way of people that work in forecasting don't often think about the dollar implications of forecast accuracy. People that are working in supply may not think about how much slob and what the value of the stock that had to be discarded or downgraded, and so on. And seeing that annualized is really galvanizing and powerfully aligning. So once you see that, I'm working with a client at the moment who's got 88 days of stock, and we believe they should be running at about 45 days of stock. They're so stuck in there. They're really struggling with that. But once we start working through it, it's $160 million of stock. 88 days sounds, okay, that's a lot, but $160 million, my God, if we could halve that, which it looks like we can, we show them the analytics to show how we can halve that by being tactical and sussing, that is galvanizing. So they've gone from being they're the experts of the industry to like, oh, okay, well, maybe if we did try something, he's suggesting that we do things differently. Why would I do things differently when I, always run this and we haven't run our customers out? Because I've got $80 million worth of stock that we could possibly liberate, and that is game changing for the business. So the opportunity assessment, even if you already intuitively know where the opportunities are in the business, it's rare that everyone in the business shares your same view and has your same experience. And once we put a dollar value on it, it allows the management team to agree, you know what, that problem over there is the most important, and this one is the second, and that's the third. So it allows the business to agree and come together and harmonize. And that's fantastically aligning. In fact, it's one of the true, when you really get a business starting to work through the whole integrated business planning and we get end-to-end visibility, the next thing that happens is once that process becomes rhythm and we get in a habit, we introduce scenarios and then finally playbooks. And it has this wonderful capability of you actually get your senior management team start working not just on scenarios because you're kind of limited to what you can do, but playbooks end up being like set plays in sporting analogy. And I really like that analogy because what happens is we may not have thought about what happens if our material supply goes down, but all you need to do is think about it once and then say, okay, let's run the scenario through. If we don't have full supply, what are we going to do? How would we respond? And you work that through your scenarios, and then you create a playbook of, if our supply capacity falls to this, here's what we do. And having playbooks, just like in set plays in gridiron and other sports like that, the first thing it does is it aligns your executive team. The next thing it does is it gives you financial agility because you've already planned how you're going to respond, so you don't have to wait for approval. And the third thing it gives you is executional agility. You're not waiting to call an emergency meeting to say, hey, we're out of raw materials, we don't know what to do, the ships have been supplied. if you've got a playbook for this, you've already got a response measure in place, and you're going to be the first one to respond, and you won't be the last at the end of the queue trying to get a ship now or trying to find another supplier. So playbooks are phenomenally powerful, and they're only available once you're in a rhythm of, firstly you get into the rhythm of a SOP or IBP, and then you start running scenarios through those, and you've got them simple enough that you start using as a tactical risk management. And we really see businesses that start butting up against that area. They are so aligned. The real benefit is that everyone in the business is already aligned. Now you're looking for what's going to rock this boat. We're already nailing it. We're starting to win work from customers that competitors we couldn't in the past. And that journey starts with, initially it starts with the piece we've already talked about, doing the opportunity assessment, picking your small goals to make sure that you get enthusiasm about it. Eventually, you bring in the different pieces of your forecasting into your supply planning, into your capacity planning, supply planning, and having that executive inclusion in the monthly rhythm so that everyone's working together and they're all working one set of numbers. And then we eventually roll in the scenario management and the playbooks. And by the time you're at that level, you're world's best. This is what the very best businesses do. And it's exciting. It's exciting because I've yet to see a business that does not far exceed anything that we could ever predict on looking at the financials, because they're starting to get benefits that are way beyond just the opportunities in the supply chain. Once you start collaborating as an organization, all actually working together, it's quite a staggering, and it's a very, very exciting place to be.
Right. Collaboration is very important. Can you share, Andrew, at the end of the episode?
Yeah, so look, maximizing those benefits for a business is really, you've got to get to them first. You've really, people get ahead of themselves and decide that because they've planned for them, they've got them. I think maximizing only comes once they're embedded as well. So to Tim's point, almost with the playbook phase, is they're embedded processes, they're embedded ways of working. And maximizing on those also means that you don't stop there. I think the businesses have to continue to improve, and they need to be revisiting the process. They need to be revisiting what they've just done in order to make sure that their next steps complement the previous step. I've seen a lot of businesses do things that were great in a project and then unwind it by doing another project that was counterintuitive to what they've just done, only because, again, they haven't thought about it across the entire business, and it's done in silos. So maximizing the benefits for me really are when you get to when you've got that step plan, that transformational plan, is to be able to say, again, did we reach what we thought we were going to get? And if it's $1, it's $1. If it's $1 million, it's $1 million. But if we only got half of that, why not? Do we need to circle back, and do we need to do something else again? Because you don't necessarily always get what you plan on. And for me, if you scrunch it up in a ball and throw it away because you didn't get exactly what you wanted, then you're just throwing away precious hours and days and months of people's lives, and you're at risk of getting the business disengaged from change. So maximizing those benefits also means, to me, rewarding the people who've done it. So remember, we talked about change fatigue or implementation fatigue, etc. Maximizing the benefits means giving people a little bit of time to breathe and saying, right, well, job well done. Let's take a step back and let's look at, let's be objective about it. Let's be critical, but not finger pointing critical. When I say critical, I mean let's judge ourselves as we would like to be judged, and that then is when you start to really see those benefits, because people will run with them. People will start to look for more change. People will start to look for more benefits because they've seen how what the project they've just done offers up those benefits. And to Tim's point, sometimes that's low-hanging fruit and it's easy. Sometimes it's not. But if you've got to really make sure that you're driving towards the end goal, and when you get there, turning around and saying, okay, so how did we do? 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 5 out of 10 as a score for you, then and be reasonable about it, and then learn from it. That's how you maximize your benefits.
Right. Okay. That is thanks so much for your knowledge, experience sharing for transformative talk. I think this is a very is a good knowledge to sharing and implement in the future, because transformation journey, each organization, each enterprise must be considered on this. And I think fast than they think, because COVID situation that impact everywhere in the world. So if each organization need to improve, I think is if they interest or need us to help, we will contact both of you to help customer in the region to improve with transformation journey. That's it. Thanks so much, Tim and Andrew. We will see in for next episode soon. Right. Bye
Thank
bye.
you so much.
Thank you for your guidance and knowledge as well. It's been great working with you.
Right. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Thanks, Siddharth. Bye. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Tim.